Well, purpose is pretty useless without strategy. When they hear something I say, I want them to go away with, these are the 3 things you need to do to actually get shit done. I meet so many business owners who have incredible ideas, but they just don't have the courage to hit go. But if you can be the sort of business owner who's just on such a bigger picture, and you're on this mission just to help people in whatever way that it ties in with your purpose, it gives you so much more fulfillment. If you're just there to make money, you leave so much of the fulfillment your business can give you on the table.
So today we're with Seb Bates, who is the founder of the Warrior Academy. The clue is in the massive big name behind you. Before we get into the journey of your idea, Seb, could you maybe explain to us what the Warrior Academy is?
Yeah, sure. So the Warrior Academy is a martial arts organization that specializes in character development. Specifically, their 3 C's, so confidence, conduct, concentration. We take children on an 8-year journey, which develops a black belt character and ultimately sets them up for a happy and successful life as an adult. You know, from the age of about 6 or 7, I started martial arts, been heavily into martial arts. Martial arts had a profound impact on my own life. It helped me with massive transitions like changing school, adolescence, going through bullying. It's been there to mentor me and be a kind of compass through my life. As I grew older, I started to meet more people who were running their own business, and I started to see that as an option. When I was 18, I left the UK. And I moved to Denmark, where I became a student studying architecture at university. I left Denmark on a one-way ticket to India, where I was backpacking around for about a year, India and Southeast Asia. And while I was traveling, I kind of picked up this concept of creating work. Rather than getting employed, you could create ways to solve problems for people in order to earn money. And part of that came from a kind of necessity, because I needed the money to continue the traveling. You know, I was really budget traveling. I was sleeping on, sleeper trains throughout India in order to get free accommodation. I was putting up hammocks between bunk beds in Thailand to get free accommodation. I was picking up jobs wherever I could. I was fighting in Thai boxing rings in Thailand to earn food and drinks and accommodation. I was doing everything you can possibly imagine, even fire shows and stuff like that, to try and earn money to continue the traveling as an 18, 19-year-old. So I was very creative in what I could do to create a lifestyle that would be something I enjoy, but would, pay the bills, essentially. But yeah, so for me, that's kind of where understanding solving problems is a profession. And that's what entrepreneurs do, right? They are problem solvers. And so that's where, if I had to trace back kind of the entrepreneurial spirit for me, it would be then and there. Then I came back to the UK and I wanted to do something physical. I quit uni, obviously. I couldn't see myself doing 7 years of studying architecture and then 40 years working in an office. It just didn't fly with me. And so, I became a personal trainer. My first gig as a personal trainer was taking over a Thai boxing club. It was in a really run-down gym with a lot of young men who were from very underprivileged backgrounds. These young guys they were rocking up, having slept on the street at night. There was a lot of drugs, alcohol. They'd come into class with a black eye and I'd be talking about why that happened. There was a lot of domestic abuse. There's a lot of violence in their life. This gym was full of testosterone. And what I noticed was my work with them was teaching them to control that and channel it in the right way. And within a year, 15 of these young men became national champions. They were bowing as they entered. They were calling each other sir. They were shaking hands. They were parking their shoes up and taking their shoes off as they walked in. Their character had changed. And therefore, the direction their life was going on had changed. And I realized that if I had worked with them when they were 5 or 6 or 9 or 10, I would have ultimately changed the course of the direction of their life in a way more positive way and set them up for a much brighter future. And so I made the decision to focus on character development at that stage. I opened up our first Warrior Academy club for young students in 2010 in a small village school. There's about 100 kids in the school. We had about 20% sign up to the club, about 20 students signed up, and they're still with us today. Some of them 12 years later still with us.
So we're currently in Dubai, although you wouldn't know it. But why Dubai? How Dubai? And has it been a good decision to come to Dubai?
Yeah, so the Warrior Academy grew from that one little club in the middle of Somerset to an organisation which had 500 students across the UK. I had a small team that were taking care of most of the technical delivery, the sales, the admin, the operations, and I'd kind of stepped back. I wanted to test the Warrior Academy somewhere urban, and so I decided London would be a good shout. But then I came here on a weekend and I realized there was no one here doing what we were doing. No one here was articulating character development in the same way. And so I started advertising over here. I was invited to speak at various schools and to parents. And then I made the big move. I came home to my wife and said, in 3 weeks we're going to move to Dubai. We lived in a small but amazing barn conversion in the middle of Somerset, which we loved. And we gave up that life to take on lots of debt and move to Dubai and a real bet the farm moment.
And was that based on gut insight, research, analysis? Why did you think the risk was going to pay off?
Yeah, so I think all risk needs to be heavily researched, right? You don't just take a risk for no reason when there are other people at stake. You're responsible for lives, your kids, your wife, your family, your employees. You've got to analyze risk and be okay with the guide that if it goes wrong, it's on your back, right? But so many times, I mentor about 300 business owners a year, and throughout these conversations I have with them, I meet so many business owners who have incredible ideas, super creative, and I can see, black and white that their idea would work, but they just don't have the courage to hit go on the red button, right? And if they did, their lives would be so different. So it's fascinating for me why some people take risks and some don't.
And what do you think the answer to that is? Do you have an opinion on that?
Perspective. I hate people who think that all I do is motivate people. I hate the idea that someone would watch this or they'd watch any of my talks and they'd be motivated, right? I want people to implement. When they hear something I say, I want them to go away with, these are the 3 things you need to do to actually get shit done. To go from someone who doesn't take risks to taking risks, there are things you can actually do. So when you look at, you'll make a big decision coming up. One of the techniques I use, write down everything that could possibly go wrong in your life. And be dark with this. Go into health issues, go into economic issues, go into things that are outside of your control, things that are inside of your control. Financially, if you lost everything, what would happen, all this sort of stuff. Articulate that onto a piece of paper really, really clearly. And then, on the other side of that, write what you would do if that happened. So now in front of you, and don't get up from the desk until you've actually finished it, right? In front of you, you've got the worst case scenario plan. And you don't leave the table until you've accepted that this is your new reality. You've now accepted that this has all happened and you've got a plan for it. Then what you can do is you can take that piece of paper, park it in a drawer somewhere, and you've basically accepted your personal Armageddon, stuck it in a drawer. So now all of your energy can be focused on the positive of what could go right. I think a lot of people focus on, there's kind of two energies here, right? One is the energy of playing to win, and the other energy is playing not to lose. And I think a lot of people focus on not losing rather than playing to win. And that is down to them not understanding or accepting what they can do if it doesn't go right.
Could you talk about your understanding of purpose and maybe, talk us through what is that and how it makes a difference in business?
Yeah, so purpose is this feeling of a bigger picture. It's like you're not just driven by money. You're not just driven by the profit and loss, the financial report. You're looking at things with a much bigger impact, long-term view of what you want to achieve, right? So if I was going to dive into my purpose, throughout my life, I've been heavily involved in extreme sports. In 2014, I was involved in a really serious base jumping accident. I basically was flying a wingsuit across the Alps in Switzerland. The canopy collapsed, I dropped 50 foot and broke everything. Was told I could never walk again. Both feet, both ankles, both legs broken. Tendons blown off the left foot, heel bone exploded. 2 years of savage rehabilitation. My feet died somewhere in Switzerland. I couldn't feel the nerves in them, so I had to retrain the nerves to the point where I even asked the surgeon to remove my feet several months into rehab. Then exactly 3 years from the accident, I was in the same hospital as my surgery, on exactly the same date, exactly 3 years later. But I was in the maternity ward because my daughter was born. And it was the most surreal light bulb moment for me when I could kind of look down and see my daughter being born, right? See this tiny living thing looking up at me, completely dependent on me to keep her alive. I kind of realized in that moment that I had to stop jumping. But I still wanted to live a big life full of adventure. So I decided to basically pour all of my energy into the business. And so for me, when I reflect on purpose, I look at the energy that I throw into my business, where that comes from, and that comes from wanting to live a big life full of adventure, but also coming from the fact that character development has had such a profound impact on my own life. And I've seen it, having worked with 25,000 kids around the world, I've seen it change so many lives that for me, it's when you've got a purpose and you're aware of the change you can facilitate, it's almost selfish not to help people with that. When I look at business owners who don't want to build a team, they don't want to expand, they don't want to take risks, I almost look at that as that lack of courage or that decision not to take risks is almost selfish. If you really believe in your service or your product and you know it can help people, then it's almost selfish not to do it. So yeah, for me, purpose is digging into your past, understanding why you do, what actually drives you, and then finding a way to use that to help other people.
And then once you've identified your purpose, is that it, job done?
Well, purpose is pretty useless without strategy. And what I found is I had all this purpose and passion, but I didn't have strategy. And so I kept running into the same problems. We were struggling with showing the market how we were different to our competitors with our pricing. We were struggling with HR challenges, and we weren't really growing up to a certain point. And so I needed strategy. So I sought out mentors. I invested into my own education, which really, really helped me and helped me break through that glass ceiling. Even now, I spend more on mentors and education than I do on living.
And you were talking as well about, which I assume is linked to purpose, this incredible charity work you're doing. How did you get into that, and what role does that does that not detract from the business?
The Bates Foundation was set up about 8 months ago, and essentially for the last 10 years I've been running scholarships. So about 10% of our students in the UK are on free tuition, which is a scholarship, we call it, where we give a child the same mentoring we would give any child, but typically there's children who are referred to us by welfare officers, children who are siblings of those who are terminally ill in children's hospices. And we had some amazing stories come from these scholarships that we were giving out. We had one parent whose child was really depressed and suicidal and wrote to us to explain that we literally saved their child's life. And I noticed what an impact that made on the team. It really lit a fire in the team's hearts. They weren't just coming to work for a paycheck, they were coming to work to make an impact to young people's lives. And one of the things I want to do is to scale that from local villages to the rest of the world. And so it's taking that feeling of making an impact and making it much, much bigger. And that's exactly what we did. I started to expand the scholarships into Kenya. Our first club there was in a homeless shelter in the slums of Nairobi. What I'm now realizing is, as the charity kind of grows, we've now got, for every paying member, we've now got a student on a scholarship, which is that was kind of our 10-year goal, and we cracked it in 8 months. What I'm now realizing is, as we go into these communities and we start to see problems, the initial thought I had was it would be through character development, right? We'd go in there and we would solve these issues by bringing what we know we can do, which is character development. But I'm now starting to see other problems and challenges crop up. And I think that as an entrepreneur, once you've solved the problem of creating enough wealth for yourself and enough money for yourself, and you feel that you're financially successful, entrepreneurs tend to be quite good people. They want to help people. And so what I find is that I'm now in this position where I'm looking at what we're doing and thinking, how else can we help in that community? What's stopping us from building an orphanage, building a school, building a hospital? What's stopping us from providing, employment to the entire village to try and solve various challenges and opportunities that we can find there? So I think this charity is going to scale massively. I think that gradually over the next 10 years, more and more of my time will move towards the philanthropic side of what we're doing and less on the commercial side. And I think that, if you really focus on building your impact into the world, your dent, if you like, the way in which you give back into your business from the early days, like I've done, right? The 10% of local, students on local scholarships, which we did 10 years ago. If you build that into your business, you're building a business that's way beyond making money. There's something which just lights a fire in you, which means that you're on a different mission. It's like so many business owners I meet, they just want to make money, right? And when they get to that stage, it feels almost soulless. But if you can be the sort of business owner who's just on such a bigger picture, and you're on this mission just to help people in whatever way that it ties in with your purpose, which is what we're doing, then it gives you so much more fulfillment. One of the things I say is if you're just there to make money, you leave so much of the fulfillment your business can give you on the table.
And talking about money, how have you funded this? How have you got external investment, and how did you find those investors, or has this been organic growth where you've reinvested profits and you've taken, you personally made sacrifices, or did you inherit a big suitcase full of cash?
I'd like to say that I inherited a big suitcase full of cash. That could be fun, but no, everything has been self-funded. So when I first moved to Dubai as a 27-year-old. With a wife and a daughter, we took on £100,000 of credit card debt, right? Big risk, bet the farm moment, moved to Dubai. We didn't know if it was going to work, but we had to make it work. It was almost like a burn the boats moment, right? Where you just had to make it work, so we did. As we've gone through and we've grown, we've become debt free, and I've been very careful. I live fairly modestly as a CEO, and I deliberately reinvest 80% of our profits back into the business to grow it. The goal for me is expansion. That's my main goal. The way in which we're now expanding is obviously with the charity side of things, that comes from my own personal savings. So the personal savings I use to expand the charity, I just pay for that. I think about 10 to 20% of my salary goes towards charity. Or typically the charity that we run. As we now grow, we're now looking at acquisitions. So over the last few months, we've taken on about £1 million of funding, which is from investors, crowdfunding, loans, that sort of stuff, which we'll be leveraging over the next 24 months to do acquisitions.
And the final question we've been asking everybody is, if you were to meet your younger self in the pub tomorrow, what advice, based on everything you've experienced, the highs, the lows, and everything you've learned, what advice would you give them if they were just at the beginning of your journey?
Think big. Have a very different perspective on life. Zoom out. Don't look at the next 1 or 2 years. Look at the next 10 to 20 years when you're making decisions. Ultimately, we panic when we look at the next 1 or 2 years, and we overestimate what we can do and underestimate what we can do long term. But it's the other way around. So I would certainly say that peace of mind comes from perspective, but so does your ability to make good decisions. Decisions that take courage. And the other thing I would say is that courage is contagious, and to surround yourself with courageous people, make your standard of friendship and your colleagues and those you work with to be people who show courage. Be relentless in how you are unique, and that's something you can tell a young person, but it's only until they get older where they stop giving a shit what everyone else thinks and they start living their own authentic self. So I'm pretty sure that advice would fall on deaf ears.
Yeah. We should have paid attention to that, yeah.